Steven Donziger, the human rights lawyer who won a $9.5 billion settlement against Chevron, was just sentenced to 6 months in jail. This follows 2 years of house arrest, and now I did a video about how his story has received really next to no mainstream media coverage, but leading up to his sentencing and following, there have been a couple pieces that I wanted to highlight for just how truly hostile the press can be toward the most worthy and valuable stories and causes. The first being this entry from Reuters from September 22nd. Disbarred Chevron foe Donziger pleads for time served sentence. Well, here's an interesting question of bias. They could have just as easily gone with human rights lawyer and Chevron foe, but they went with disbarred Chevron foe. Of all the words that could have preceded Chevron foe, they went with one of the most negative. Disbarred lawyer Steven Donziger, who was found guilty of criminal contempt after spending more than 2 decades trying to hold Chevron Corp liable for rainforest pollution in Ecuador, has asked a Manhattan federal court to sentence him to time served. Leading with his sentencing request kind of casts a sense of guilt, does it not? Donziger, who was disbarred in New York last year, was charged in August 2019 with failing to turn over his computer, phones, and other electronic devices, among other conduct. The New York City resident has been in home detention since August 2019 to address concerns of flight risk. The concerns of flight risk were a joke, but some pretty important details other than that were left out. His contempt of court resulted from him being asked to turn over his phone and laptop, yes, but he appealed on the grounds that it would violate his commitments to his clients. But he was willing to turn them over if he lost the appeal. However, the judge went ahead and drafted contempt charges anyway. So this all could have been avoided had the judge not been needlessly aggressive. This is like writing about someone who ends up killing someone else in self-defense, but you leave out the self-defense part. It kind of changes the story. And then there's this from Forbes. What should Steven Donziger's sentence for criminal contempt be? Because apparently 2 years of house arrest is not enough. So every few months, this guy writes a negative column about Donziger, and this one is no exception. Here's a particularly outrageous passage. While some of Donziger's supporters defend their support for him eloquently, Donziger's own attorney's sentencing memorandum reflects his client's lack of respect for our judicial process. Senior United States District Judge Lewis Kaplan, the Clinton-appointed and well-respected jurist against whom Donziger's outrages were committed, is defiantly described as a tobacco company lawyer turned federal judge. Judge Kaplan is alleged to have channeled his inner Richard II to creatively aid and abet Chevron's alleged goal of demonizing Steven Donziger. Our long-term strategy is to demonize Donziger, a 2009 internal Chevron memo. The defense memorandum goes on to relitigate the Ecuadorian pursuit of Chevron despite multiple decisions, in this country and several others, that confirm the fraud Donziger helped mastermind. Like Mr. Donziger's progressive supporters, his attorney apparently believes that our judicial system and a big capitalist corporation are in cahoots to frustrate a despoiled Ecuadorian tribe and its valiant American defender. That belief cannot stand, as I have pointed out in multiple columns. Chevron's victory is in fact a triumph of the rule of law. Imagine having a positive enough view of Chevron that they're winning anything is good. The aggrievement this guy feels that someone would question the judicial process or cast aspersions upon a judge, as if the judicial process has never failed anyone before, and as if there's never been a biased or corrupt judge. But it seems actually pretty reasonable, the observation that a judge who, as a lawyer, once represented Philip Morris, as Judge Kaplan did, may have underlying sympathies for corporations that are known to cause harm. And as far as that judge being in cahoots with a big capitalist corporation, I mean, the Southern District of New York declined to prosecute Donziger. So Kaplan did something extremely unusual. He appointed a private law firm for prosecution. And that law firm has ties to Chevron. And of course, contrary to his taunting closing statement that Chevron's victory is in fact a triumph for the rule of law, in fact, Chevron's victory only proves that the law can be bought. Chevron has employed hundreds of lawyers to pursue the Donziger case. This is an effort by Chevron to punish someone who won a huge settlement against them for crimes that were committed. Also, I just have to point out that the author of this column, Michael Krauss, is a faculty advisor to a chapter of the Federalist Society. the conservative legal organization that gets funding from, among others, Chevron. And then we have this from Bloomberg, written after his sentencing. TikTok hero and Chevron foe Donziger gets 6 months in jail. What an uncharitable headline. And what is with all these people writing Chevron foe Donziger? I've seen a lot of people write that, but what a weird way to express their opposition. But anyway, Stephen Donziger, the disbarred lawyer who once won an $8.6 billion judgment against Chevron Corp. Over contamination of the Amazon rainforest, was sentenced to 6 months in jail for defying court orders. The award was ultimately scrapped, and Donziger was ruled to have won it through fraud and bribery, but he has remained a hero to many environmental activists. Dozens, including Roger Waters of Pink Floyd, protested his prosecution outside the Manhattan federal courthouse on Friday, and videos tagged "Free Donziger" have been viewed more than 700,000 times on TikTok. And that's the opening of the article. You know, this guy could have chosen to start his article with something about how the UN ruled that Donziger's house arrest violates international law, for example. But he didn't. He chose to go with Donziger's blossoming social media fame. And, of course, his guilt is a foregone conclusion. He's a fraud, as this illustrates. The author drills down on the attention he's attracted from celebrities who have shown up, and the fervency of his supporters demanding things like the judges be removed, but that's all juxtaposed with his seemingly taking for granted that the rulings of those judges are just. And although, at least in fairness, that author does make an attempt to present Donziger's side as opposed to the other column, which was just written by some ghoul who gives lectures for the Federalist Society, this one is more injurious because the Forbes one at least is openly biased. This one is just as hostile to the truth in the background of the story, but it reads as even-handed. But the fact is, you can't write about the story without going into the background, the actual impact on Ecuador, the person Donziger supposedly bribed who was getting bankrolled by Chevron and then recanted their testimony, which kind of means that the fraud case against Donziger falls apart, the motives of Chevron, and the fact that Chevron got exactly what it wanted in all this. They didn't have to pay damages, and the lawyer who once said damages is likely going to jail. What more could Chevron have asked for? And Donziger aside, the damages are real. 16 billion gallons of toxic waste, birth defects, cancer, and that was present in none of these pieces. If all of those details are left out, there is just no serious way to write about this story.